Most gardeners waste hundreds of dollars every fall filling their raised beds with expensive compost, not realizing they're literally burying their money. But there's a forgotten shortcut that old-timers used, a trick that costs almost nothing and still gives your plants the rich, fertile soil they crave. Imagine walking into spring with raised beds already prepped, soft, and bursting with life, without hauling a single bag of compost. The secret isn't in what you buy, it's in what you already have. Every year, nature performs her own quiet miracle. She layers leaves, grass clippings, food scraps, and leftover stalks, and by the time the snow melts, that simple mix has turned into a nutrient-rich base. And the best part? You can do it right now, in your own backyard, without breaking a sweat or spending a dime. So before you reach for your wallet or start shoveling compost, hold on. In the next few minutes, you're going to see how one small fall habit can change the way your garden grows, and why less work and more wisdom might just be the best gardening investment you ever make. This isn't just about saving money. It's about working with nature, not against her. Because the truth is, the most fertile soil isn't made in a bag. It's made in time. Stay with me. You're about to learn the fall shortcut that gardeners used for generations, and it might just change how you grow forever. Meet Mabel Jenkins, 74 years young, a retired teacher with a heart full of stories and hands that have seen more dirt than chalk. For decades, her backyard garden was her quiet classroom. Each season, it taught her new lessons, patience, timing, and how life always finds a way to grow again. But one chilly October afternoon, Mabel faced a problem. Her compost pile was empty, her savings thin, and those raised beds looked like hungry mouths waiting to be fed. Not this year, she sighed, staring at the empty compost bin. Then, almost like a whisper carried on the wind, she remembered something her grandmother once said: "Let the earth feed itself. Child, nature knows how to take care of her own." So, instead of buying compost, Mabel raked the fallen leaves, gathered dry grass, shredded kitchen scraps, and spread them across her raised beds, layering them like a cozy blanket before winter's sleep. Her neighbors laughed, but Mabel smiled. She was trusting in old wisdom. Come spring, when everyone else was still hauling compost bags, Mabel's beds were rich, dark, and alive. Worms danced beneath the surface, and her seedlings thrived. That year, she didn't just save money. She rediscovered a secret buried in time. Sometimes the best fertilizer is faith in the cycle of nature itself. Raised beds, they're every gardener's dream. Neat, organized, and easy to work with. But here's the truth that most people learn the hard way. Raised beds are hungry. Every year, the soil inside them sinks, losing its height, its nutrients, and its vitality. So, come fall, most gardeners grab their shovels, drive to the store, and load up on expensive bags of compost or topsoil, trying to refill what nature has quietly used up. But here's the hidden problem. That cycle of buying, hauling, and dumping doesn't just drain your wallet. It drains your soil's natural balance too. Compost from bags often looks rich and dark, but much of it is lifeless, sterilized, or bulked up with fillers. You might be adding volume, but not life. When you pour in that store-bought compost year after year, you're forcing your garden to depend on a quick fix, like feeding a child only candy and calling it nutrition. The soil might look good at first, but over time, it loses its structure, its microorganisms, and the living rhythm that makes it truly fertile. Think about it. In nature, no one refills the forest floor. The trees shed their leaves, the grass dies back, and everything that falls eventually becomes food for what grows next. Nature has no waste, no panic, and no trip to the garden center. It's a perfect cycle of renewal. Yet, in our raised beds, we often fight that cycle. We strip the soil of its natural covering, leave it bare through winter, and then wonder why it looks tired come spring. That's why, by the second or third year, many raised beds become compacted, nutrient-poor, and lifeless. The top layer may look okay, but underneath, the soil microbes, those invisible gardeners, are starving. And so the pattern continues. Every fall, gardeners spend money they don't have on compost they don't need, trying to fix a problem nature already knows how to solve. That's exactly where Mabel Jenkins found herself. Her once fluffy garden beds had sunk by nearly half an inch. She'd spent more on compost than groceries that month, and the results kept disappointing her. The more she added, the less her plants seemed to respond. It wasn't until she stopped adding and started observing that she realized what was really happening. Her soil wasn't broken. It was just hungry for a different kind of feeding. Raised beds aren't just boxes of dirt, they're living ecosystems. And like any living thing, they need more than a quick refill. They need a steady diet of organic matter that breaks down slowly, layer by layer, feeding the roots from below. So if your raised beds keep sinking every year, it's not because you're doing something wrong. It's because nature is doing what she's always done, breaking things down to build them back stronger. The real mistake isn't the settling. It's trying to fix it the wrong way. The cheap fall shortcut. Here's where everything changes. The moment Mabel Jenkins stumbled upon a secret that flipped her entire gardening routine upside down. It wasn't something new. It wasn't something fancy. In fact, it was something her grandmother's generation used instinctively, long before garden stores and fertilizer brands took over. Instead of hauling in compost, Mabel looked around and realized that nature had already delivered everything she needed, right at her feet. Leaves, dry grass, fading plants, and even a few kitchen scraps. She began to see her backyard not as waste, but as raw material for next season's harvest. So she grabbed her rake, collected the fallen leaves, trimmed her garden clippings, and sprinkled in vegetable peels and eggshells from her kitchen. Then she started layering, a little green, a little brown, a sprinkle of soil, like she was building a lasagna for the earth itself. The first layer, twigs and small branches for airflow. The second, leaves to trap moisture. The third, grass clippings and veggie scraps, packed with nitrogen. The fourth, a thin layer of garden soil to help kickstart decomposition. Layer by layer, her raised beds transformed into what she lovingly called her sleeping garden. Instead of looking empty, they were tucked in, cozy under a natural blanket of organic matter that would quietly break down through winter. The cold, the rain, the worms, they all worked together, turning her trash into black gold. By spring, that rough, messy pile had melted into rich, fluffy soil teeming with life. Her plants rooted deeper, her bed stayed moist longer, and the need for store-bought compost? Gone. Completely gone. This wasn't luck, it was nature's design. What Mabel rediscovered was a method known by many names: lasagna gardening, sheet mulching, trench composting, but all with the same idea: feed the soil from within, not from above. Let time and biology do the hard work while you rest through the winter. And the best part? It costs nothing. No compost bags, no truckloads of soil, no backbreaking shoveling. Just a little layering, a little patience, and trust in the process. Now imagine this. Instead of fighting to fill your beds every year, you simply feed them each fall. You recycle what your garden gives you, and in return, it gives you more, healthier plants, stronger yields, and soil that gets better with age. That's the beauty of this shortcut. It's not just thrifty, it's smart. You're creating a self-sustaining ecosystem that mirrors how forests renew themselves every year. You're not working against nature anymore. You're joining her rhythm. So before you toss those fall leaves to the curb, pause. Gather them. Layer them. Let them do their quiet work while you stay warm inside. Come spring, your raised beds will reward you with soil so rich you can almost smell the life in it. The science. As the months passed, Mabel's garden began to change, quietly, invisibly, yet profoundly. Beneath the surface, the layers she had so patiently built began to come alive. The fallen leaves softened into mulch. The grass clippings melted away, and the kitchen scraps turned into dark, sweet-smelling humus. Worms, beetles, and tiny microbes gathered for a winter feast, working day and night, turning waste into life. While frost blanketed the world above, warmth was building below. The decomposition process, nature's slow burn, generated gentle heat that kept the soil active through the coldest days. Even as Mabel sat by her window with a cup of tea, watching snowflakes drift across her garden, something magical was happening under that blanket of leaves and twigs. Her soil wasn't sleeping, it was growing stronger. By early spring, before her neighbors had even unstacked their compost bags or tilled their frozen beds, Mabel's garden was already awake. When she brushed aside the top layer, what she found made her heart swell: a deep, dark soil that crumbled like chocolate cake between her fingers. It smelled earthy, alive, ready. When she planted her first seeds, they sprouted faster than ever before. The roots dug deep, finding food and moisture right away. Her lettuce was greener, her tomatoes fuller, her herbs more fragrant. And she hadn't spent a single dollar on compost or fertilizer. The secret? Patience and partnership with nature. Mabel had learned to work with the seasons, not against them. Instead of fighting decay, she welcomed it. Instead of racing to fix her soil in spring, she had started nurturing it in fall, giving time the chance to do its quiet, miraculous work. That's what many modern gardeners miss, the understanding that soil is alive. It's not a dead medium that needs constant refilling. It's a living ecosystem that thrives when you feed it slowly and naturally. The microbes, fungi, and worms are nature's original gardeners. And when you give them what they need, organic matter, moisture, and rest, they reward you with the kind of fertility no bag of compost can match. And that's exactly what Mabel discovered. The best gardens aren't built in spring. They're prepared in fall. Every layer she added, every leaf, every scrap, was an investment that paid off in abundance. Her soil didn't just hold plants. It held life, memory, and balance. By mid-spring, when her neighbors were still breaking their backs spreading compost, Mabel was already harvesting spinach and lettuce. Her secret wasn't strength or money, it was trust. Trust in the process, in the seasons, and in the timeless rhythm of renewal. So if you've ever felt like your garden is too much work or too expensive to maintain, take a page from Mabel's story. Don't rush to fix what time and nature are already healing. Start layering, start trusting, and let the earth do what it does best, restore itself. The result: by the time spring sunlight began to warm the earth, Mabel's backyard had transformed into something extraordinary. What began as a pile of scraps, leaves, and old grass had become a living, breathing carpet of rich, black soil. When she pressed her hand into it, it crumbled softly, moist, warm, and full of life. Worms wriggled through it like tiny farmers. And even before planting a single seed, Mabel could feel it. Her soil was alive. She started small, a few rows of lettuce, some tomatoes, herbs, and peppers. Within weeks, she noticed something she hadn't seen in years. Her lettuce was thicker, crisp, and bursting with flavor. Her tomatoes ripened earlier, juicier, and sweeter than before. The basil leaves were fragrant enough to perfume the entire garden path. And all of this happened without a single trip to the store, without a dime spent on fertilizer or bagged compost. Her neighbors couldn't believe it. "What did you use this year, Mabel?" they asked, peering over her fence. She just smiled and said, "Nothing but time and what nature left behind." But the real reward wasn't just in the harvest, it was in the lesson. Mabel realized she hadn't just grown plants. She had grown wisdom. She had learned that gardening isn't about control or spending more money. It's about cooperation, a relationship with the land. She'd stopped fighting to make her soil perfect and instead started listening to it, feeding it slowly, patiently, and naturally. That shift changed everything. Gardening no longer felt like work. It felt like partnership. She began to notice how every fallen leaf had purpose, how every worm was a worker, how every season carried its own quiet blessing. Her garden had become more than a place to grow food. It was a living reflection of grace, patience, and renewal. And perhaps the most beautiful part? Her wallet stayed untouched. What used to cost her hundreds every fall now cost her nothing but a few afternoons of gathering and layering. Nature had provided freely. All she had to do was notice. Mabel's story spread through her community. Soon, others began to follow her example. Instead of hauling compost, they started collecting leaves, mulching their gardens, and trusting the process. And when spring came, they too discovered what she had. That real growth doesn't always come from adding more. Sometimes, it comes from letting go. Mabel summed it up best when a young neighbor asked her, "Secret to such a beautiful garden?" She chuckled and said, "Child, I didn't just grow plants this year. I grew wisdom." That's the quiet magic of this fall shortcut. It's not just about gardening cheaper. It's about gardening smarter. About learning to see abundance where others see waste. Because when you understand that every leaf, every scrap, every season plays its part, you stop chasing perfection and start partnering with creation itself. Bonus tip. Now, if you really want to take Mabel's fall shortcut to the next level, here's a little secret she swears by. It's simple, powerful and completely natural. Before the first frost settles in, she adds a few handfuls of aged manure or used coffee grounds to her raised beds. Not much, just enough to sprinkle across the top layers before tucking everything in under leaves or straw. Why? Because those small additions act like a spark to a slow-burning fire. Aged manure is packed with gentle, slow-release nutrients that keep the microbes happy and active through the cold months. Coffee grounds, on the other hand, add organic nitrogen and help feed the fungal networks that knit the soil together beneath the surface. Together, they keep the underground ecosystem humming all winter long, even when everything above seems asleep. Think of it like giving your garden a warm meal before bed. While the snow falls and the world turns quiet, those tiny workers, bacteria, fungi, and worms stay busy, slowly transforming every leaf, scrap, and clipping into dark, crumbly compost. By the time spring rolls around, your soil isn't just rich, it's supercharged with microbial life, ready to wake up your plants the moment you plant them. Mabel calls it her secret winter stew. Every fall, as she scatters manure and coffee grounds, she hums to herself, smiling, knowing her garden is already preparing for spring. Most folks wait until March to think about growth, she says. But the real gardeners start in October. And she's right. These little steps, the leaves, the layers, the coffee, the patience, all work together to build something money can't buy: living soil. A bed that feeds itself, holds moisture longer, resists disease, and grows healthier, tastier food year after year. That's the beauty of this old-fashioned wisdom. It doesn't demand much. Just observation, gratitude, and a willingness to let the earth work her magic. You don't need to fight her, you just need to join in her rhythm. So before winter truly sets in, take a walk through your garden one more time. Smell the air, feel the soil, and give it that final touch of love. A sprinkle of aged manure or coffee grounds. Maybe both. Cover it all back up with leaves or straw and let nature take over. Come spring, when you pull back that layer, you'll see the reward: soil that's darker, looser, and teeming with life. And when your plants begin to grow stronger than ever before, you'll remember this moment, that quiet act of trust you gave your garden before the frost. Because gardening, at its heart, is faith in action. You give a little today, and months later, the earth gives it back multiplied. Do you have your own fall garden trick that saves money or effort? Maybe something your parents or grandparents taught you. Drop it in the comments below. Let's build a list of senior garden wisdom that future generations can learn from. As the seasons turned and Mabel's garden flourished, her story became more than a gardening tip. It became a quiet lesson about life itself. She reminded everyone around her that gardening isn't about spending more. It's about understanding more. It's about slowing down long enough to see what nature has been trying to teach us all along, that everything we need to grow is already here. If only we'd stop long enough to notice. In a world that constantly tells us to buy more, do more, rush more, Mabel did the opposite. She listened. She watched the leaves fall, the worms wiggle, the frost melt. She trusted that what seemed dead in fall was only preparing to live again in spring. Her wisdom wasn't found in fancy garden tools or shiny fertilizer bags. It was found in patience, observation, and faith in nature's design. Before you fill your raised beds this fall, she used to say, listen to the earth, not the ads, because the earth already knows how to heal itself, how to restore balance, and how to feed what's next. All it needs is for us to step back, lend a hand, and let time do its quiet work. And maybe that's what gardening really is, not just growing plants, but growing perspective. Each season, it humbles us. It teaches us that good things take time, that mistakes can turn into miracles, and that even after the coldest winters, life always finds its way back. When Mabel looked out at her thriving beds one cool spring morning, she smiled and said, "The garden doesn't need me to be perfect. It just needs me to pay attention." That simple truth applies to more than soil. It applies to life. Growth doesn't come from what we add in haste, but from what we nurture with care. So as you prepare your own garden this fall, take a breath. Look at the leaves falling at your feet. They're not waste, they're wisdom. Gather them, layer them, and trust that beneath that blanket of brown and gold, something beautiful is already taking root. Because gardening, at its heart, isn't just about raising plants. It's about raising hope. It's about believing that with a little patience, care, and love, what looks ordinary can become extraordinary. If Mabel's story warmed your heart or sparked a new idea for your own garden, take a moment to pass it on. Give this video a thumbs up. Share it with a fellow gardener who loves the simple, timeless ways. And subscribe for more stories that remind us that the best gardens and the best lives grow from wisdom, not from worry. Let's keep this spirit alive together, one gardener, one story, one season at a time. What lesson has gardening taught you about life or patience? Drop it in the comments. Your reflection might be exactly what another gardener needs to hear today.